Médecins Sans Frontières pulls staff from Democratic Republic of Congo Ebola hotspots following attacks on treatment centers. Celebrating Africa's film and television at FESPACO 2019 in Burkina Faso.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. Tonight we begin in East Africa, where gun battles rocked Somalia's capital throughout the day Friday. The fighting comes just one day after the car bomb attacks by insurgents on one of Mogadishu's busiest streets. Officials say at least 20 people have been killed and 40 wounded in the bombings and the clashes between the militants and Somali special forces known as the Alpha Group. The first explosion on Thursday occurred on one of the capital's busiest streets, Maka al-Mukarramah Road, where dozens of people were sitting outside hotels and restaurants in the area when the bomb exploded. Al-Shabaab, the Al-Qaeda-linked terrorist group, is claiming responsibility for the attacks. An Al-Shabaab spokesman told Reuters that his group is in control of the hotel Maka al-Mukarramah. An hour after the explosion, a second one occurred outside another hotel near the busy 4K junction in Mogadishu. The medical charity Doctors Without Borders is suspending medical activities at the epicenter of an Ebola epidemic in Democratic Republic of Congo. The move comes after two of its facilities were torched by unidentified assailants. Sisipo Sikwayiya reports.
The smoldering debris of an Ebola treatment center attacked by armed assailants. It's one of two Médecins Sans Frontières facilities targeted this week in the Democratic Republic of Congo's North Kivu province. The aid agency has since suspended its medical activities in the region, which is at the epicenter of an Ebola epidemic.
We're still investigating. It was quite well organized. They set fire to areas that were not for treatment, like the changing and utility rooms, which were burned down. But in any case, the treatment center is no longer operational whatsoever.
The Ebola outbreak is one of the worst in Congo's history. First declared last August, the hemorrhagic fever has killed over 500 people so far and infected over 300 others. Aid workers have faced mistrust in some areas during their efforts to contain the outbreak. It's a concern Congo's health minister is trying to end.
We must not forget that Ebola is a fatal illness, an extremely contagious disease. There are entire families in North Kivu who have been decimated. In the West African epidemic, entire villages have disappeared. So the message is that the teams fighting Ebola are here to ensure the population don't suffer a great loss.
The unidentified assailants behind this incident set off a fire and became embroiled in a gun battle with security forces. Congo's health ministry said 38 suspected Ebola patients and 12 confirmed cases were in the center at the time of the attack. None of the patients or staff accounted for were injured.
Sisipo Sikwayiya of Reuters with that report. A survey conducted by Nigeria's Bureau of Statistics and UNICEF shows millions of households in Nigeria do not have access to clean water sources. While the supply of clean water in Nigeria is improving, 3 in 10 people still lack access. Timothy Obiezu has more from Abuja.
Every day, it's a struggle for water for Ruth Samuel and her family. Sometimes they have to wait hours to scoop water from the spring.
Like in the dry season, we used to wake up sometimes 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. Before you get there, man, you cannot see water. You wait.
Aid agencies say 60 million Nigerians, or 33% of the population, do not have access to clean water. But experts say the figure could be higher.
I think that figure is a little bit conservative, in the sense that as Nigerians, we know that more of our population live in the rural areas. And I think the World Bank statistics tells us that about 51% of our population reside in the rural areas. And it is common knowledge that the rural population don't have access to clean water.
Like many other states in Nigeria's northern region, the Federal District of Abuja lies on the fringes of the Sahel Desert, which means in the dry season when water level is low, sources like this could dry up, leaving thousands here who rely on it daily in dire need.
The major problem is funding. Yes. And with improved funding, there will be improved infrastructural development, which will guarantee adequate provision of water for the population.
But Joseph Ibrahim says there could be a way out.
I think it's high time we start recycling our waters and through channeling our water to waste treatment plants, and from there we separate water as is done in other developed countries of the world.
The government launched an emergency action plan in November to address water problems, but it has yet to make much impact. Until the rains return, Ruth Samuel and many others here will have to rely primarily on a water source that is drying out. Timothy Obiezu for VOA News, Abuja.
The United States military's largest counter-terrorism exercise on the African continent is wrapping up Friday. The two-week U.S.-led event brings together 2,000 military personnel from more than 30 African and Western nations. Our VOA Pentagon correspondent Calabab is in Camp Zagre on the edge of Burkina Faso's capital Ouagadougou, where she has taken an inside look into these counter-terror operations.
Yes, this week we've seen how African nations and Western nations have worked together to share tactical skills, how to secure a perimeter, how to provide medical assistance to people who've been hurt, and we've also seen how they've shared operational command insight. This training in Burkina Faso comes as the country is battling an insurgency of several al-Qaeda-linked groups. I spoke to one Burkinabe officer, and he told me the insurgency was like a toxin to his country. The U.S. ambassador to Burkina Faso, Andrew Young, told VOA that the situation, the threat was getting worse. And I spoke with Major General Marcus Hicks. He's the commander of Special Operations Forces on the continent, and he was very frank about the counter-terror war in West Africa.
I would tell you at this time we are not winning. You know, the larger group of Western liberal democracies and those who seek to be democracies and struggle with the transition to democracy and aspire to be democracies are not winning against the Salafist threat.
And all this as the Pentagon has announced that they are cutting military personnel on the continent by 10%. The first round of those cuts have already happened. They cut between 100 and 200 military personnel from West Africa. Major General Hicks says he would not recommend cutting troops further.
Well, thank you very much, Carla. That's VOA Pentagon correspondent Calabab reporting from Ouagadougou. Well, I want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our show live on Facebook, so check us out and share our show with your friends. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vince McCory. Still ahead on Africa 54, the dynamic young Kenyan performer Amani G. But first, a look at Friday's headlines.
In Somalia, officials say at least 20 people are dead and 40 others wounded in two car bombings on one of Mogadishu's busiest streets, followed by clashes between insurgents and security forces. In the DRC, Doctors Without Borders has suspended medical activities at the epicenter of an Ebola epidemic after two of its facilities were set on fire by unidentified assailants in the North Kivu province. In Nigeria, a survey conducted by the Bureau of Statistics and UNICEF shows that millions of households in the country do not have access to clean water. In Algeria, thousands of people continue to protest in the capital. That's against ailing President Abdelaziz Bouteflika's bid for a fifth term in power.
The U.S.-North Korea nuclear summit in Vietnam ended abruptly without an agreement to restrict the North's threatening nuclear program. But analysts say it was not a total failure. Despite the dispute over sanctions, U.S. President Donald Trump seemed to indicate that Washington is open to compromise and willing to pursue a step-by-step nuclear reduction process that Pyongyang has called for, one that links limited concessions to partial progress. VOA's Brad Patton reports from Washington.
In Hanoi, President Trump walked away from his second meeting with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un because he said Kim wanted total sanctions relief for only incremental denuclearization measures.
Basically, they wanted the sanctions lifted in their entirety, and we couldn't do that. They were willing to denuke a large portion of the areas that we wanted, but we couldn't give up all of the sanctions for that.
North Korea says it asked only for partial relief of sanctions that affected the economy, but perhaps the most important leverage Trump holds in nuclear negotiations are United Nations restrictions in place that limit the country's oil imports and bans most exports.
It's a little unclear exactly what that ask was, but it was above and beyond what was acceptable for the type of exchange that they were proposing.
The dispute over sanctions relief may illustrate the limits of Trump's personal diplomacy, an attempt to nurture a friendship with Kim to gain concessions.
Mr. Trump finally understood that his personal charm offensive is not adequate to bring about denuclearization.
North Korea is believed to have 20 to 60 nuclear weapons, along with long-range missile capability to target the U.S. mainland. During the first Trump-Kim summit in Singapore, the North Korean leader made a broad commitment to work towards complete denuclearization. In Hanoi, the two leaders were expected to agree to concrete measures, such as dismantling the Yongbyon nuclear site that processes plutonium fuel, and to improve relations by signing a peace declaration. The negotiations leading up to the summit also seem to indicate Washington's willingness to compromise on its long-standing demand that Pyongyang first completely dismantle its nuclear program before there can be any concessions.
It indicates that the U.S. is interested in doing a step-by-step, phased approach with North Korea, which is something that my organization and others have been recommending for a long time. This all-or-nothing approach was not going to be effective.
For now, both sides still seem open to pursuing a nuclear deal, but analysts say it may be time for staff-level negotiators to work out the complex policy differences before the leaders commit to another summit. Brian Patton, VOA News, Washington.
Well, as has been mentioned, President Trump came up short in hopes of striking a major nuclear deal with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. And efforts in Vietnam were largely overshadowed by the riveting testimony before Congress of his once trusted personal lawyer and fixer, Michael Cohen. It was yet another glaring example of the split-screen nature of the Trump presidency. VOA national correspondent Jim Malone has the details.
Disappointment in Hanoi after a summit between President Trump and North Korean leader Kim failed to live up to expectations for a comprehensive agreement on North Korea's nuclear program.
He has a certain vision, and it's not exactly our vision, but it's a lot closer than it was a year ago. And I think, eventually we'll get there. But for this particular visit, we decided that we had to walk.
But half a world away in Washington, another drama was playing out in a congressional hearing room with possibly ominous consequences for the president.
My name is Michael Dean Cohen.
The president's former personal attorney and fixer unleashed on his former boss before Congress and a national television audience. Cohen accused the president of criminal wrongdoing and painted a devastating personal portrait of the president.
Because I know what Mr. Trump is. He is a racist, he is a con man, and he is a cheat.
Trump has denied Cohen's allegations, and Republicans slammed Cohen as an admitted liar and accused Democrats of using his testimony to set the stage for impeachment. Republican Congressman Clay Higgins.
This is an attempt to injure our president and lay some sort of soft cornerstone for future impeachment proceedings.
But the political and legal damage wrought by Cohen's testimony could be substantial, says legal analyst Randy Zellen.
Michael Cohen is not a good witness, not a great witness. He is the ultimate witness because he was there.
The president saw the hearing as a major distraction from his foreign policy efforts.
But I think having a fake hearing like that and having it in the middle of this very important summit is really a terrible thing.
Beset by weak polls and investigations at home, Trump was hoping for success with North Korea to boost him politically, says David Kim.
Because he wants to win. This is the only diplomatic achievement that he can claim right now. We're pulling out of Syria, we're pulling out of Afghanistan, we have bad relations with our friends in NATO.
The lack of progress on North Korea, combined with the allegations leveled by Cohen, come at a time when the president is preparing for what will be a difficult re-election battle, says John Fortier.
Look, he's still at 43, 44% of the public thinking he's doing a good job. That's not a terrible number, but it's probably not a high enough number that he would want to go into the election.
For the president, more challenges lie ahead in the near future, including the long-awaited report summarizing the Russia investigation led by special counsel Robert Mueller. Jim Malone, VOA News, Washington.
Well, Africa's biggest film festival turns 50 this year. The Pan-African Film and Television Festival, FESPACO, opened in Burkina Faso this week, with filmmakers from around the continent gathering to celebrate their work. Let's hear what some of those filmmakers had to say.
I came here with a short film in competition. It's called Ikersha, and was screened twice, and the screening was good, and many people came. This is FESPACO, there's a lot of people, and so they came in a theater. That's a good thing, to show a film and then to have the audience.
I'm very happy to be on the FESPACO because it's a main festival in Africa, in West Africa. And today I'm doing the marketing of my first long movie, and this is very nice for me because there is many producers here can show can see my movie, and I really need to find money to invest on that movie.
So that's my third attending in FESPACO, which is the biggest event of the cinematography in Africa. It's a kind of an important rendezvous, if I can say, because you meet all of the people of the industry in the cinema, African industry. We also discover new films sometimes, films that we already see in other film festivals. But it's important here because you have the opportunity to meet those filmmakers and then talk about the movie as well. Certainly there is more things to do in FESPACO, if I can say, about the industry. We really need to have a market in the proper term, like exchanging film, buying film. We need definitely more television attending the FESPACO to buy actually film, because all African film doesn't need to only be seen on film festival or international film festival. It's a good thing, but they also need to be screened on television, national television, African televisions, for the older people, the audience, the local audience can see them actually.
Well, here's what's trending. A digitally fabricated house, partly built by robots, has opened in Zurich, demonstrating the very latest in construction techniques, materials, and design. The living room has a central curved load-bearing concrete wall built by a robot without formwork to shape it. Now, the machine arranged and welded the reinforced steel to the right shape before builders pumped cement into the framework. The result is a lightweight structural wall made with a fraction of the materials normally required. The house will now be used as a living research area, with all its systems and functions either fully automated or responding to voice commands. 4 residents will move in the next 2 months. In other tech news, Japan and in Singapore held a panel discussion to discuss pioneering disaster prevention. An artificial intelligence-powered exoskeleton and portable water system was shown to the guests. Cyberdyne, a type of hybrid-assisted limb, mimics human muscles and powered by the human brain. It has already been used in Hiroshima and a smaller version following heavy rains in western Japan in 2018. Meanwhile, pioneering water technology called Water enables a portable water purification system. All the chemicals needed are in a pocket and are used to recycle used water anywhere. In time, it will help emergency disaster response teams and areas of the world that struggle with droughts. In time, it could also help combat water scarcity, and that's what's trending today. Well, it's time for Friday Music Maker segment. Today we introduce to you Amani G. She's a gifted 13-year-old Kenyan artist. To tell us more about Amani and her song In Love is David Vandy, host of the popular VOA music show African Beat. David, welcome back to Africa 54.
Well, thank you so very much, and it's so good to be back here.
We want to hear you, so we're going to have you hold on to your microphone, push it up, so that you can tell me what you think about, what you know about Amani G, because I know that you met Amani G, you met Amani G's father, and that's how you got to know more about this girl. Just tell us a little bit about the girl and how she ended up being such a great artist.
Well, actually, I got to know about her through her father, who is also a musician and a producer in Kenya. He was here on my show, and we talked a lot about Amani. Amani is just 13 years old.
He's a kid.
You know, and first of all, when Amani was singing, you know, it's like when children are gathered in the streets of Kenya, and then tourists are coming in, they were in a vehicle, and all the kids were running towards the vehicle, and they said, well, we're going to give you candy. So what can you give to us? And she said, well, there's nothing I can give except my voice. And so she did a cover of Alicia Keys' song, This Girl Is on Fire. And what this tourist did is just put her phone and did a video and put it on Twitter and Instagram, and it went viral. And guess what? Alicia picked it up.
Wow.
And she retweeted it.
Yes.
And before you know it, Amani G, Amani Gracious, just a little 13-year-old girl, has become a superstar overnight in Kenya.
And today we're going to play Amani G's song In Love on Africa 54 here. So let's watch this video.
Okay.
Well, so David, this young girl, apparently, you know, she's kind of, she's become a hit, but what's that kind of music? Is she, like when she's singing here, In Love, what is she talking about?
Well, actually, this song was written by Vivian, another top star in Kenya, who saw the talent in Amani and said, well, you know what? Somebody has got to be there. Somebody has got to help this young girl, you know, put herself out there. And
so she's focused on her education. She understands she's just 13 years old, but she appreciates that she has this talent and she's still nurturing that.
And all the television stations, radio stations around Kenya, everybody wants to talk to Amani G. Everybody wants to feature this young prodigy from Kenya that is hitting the headlines.
Yeah. So if you were to get an opportunity to push this girl up as a producer, where do you see her going? What kind of music will she kind of probably get into?
I want to believe that she will get into pop music.
Yeah.
You know, because for a little girl like that to be seen by a superstar like Alicia Keys,
that is big.
Man, that is huge.
David, thank you very much for helping make this another fantastic music segment. And that's David Vandy, the host of VOA's African Beat radio program. So now we want to leave you with more of In Love, the hit song by the dynamic Kenyan artist Amani G. From all of us here in Washington, have a good night